Welcome to the Planning for Life podcast with certified financial planner professional Russell Jacobs and financial life advisor Carl Coolidge. Carl and Russell will share creative strategies and ideas for overcoming challenges in your personal and financial life. Inevitably, life happens, and we will empower you to reach your destination. Thanks for joining us. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to another Planning for Life podcast with Carl Coolidge. You know, there's a lot of information out there about how to grow your business as an entrepreneur, maybe even do some management and some leadership stuff, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of stuff out there that really breaks down the financial implications of being an entrepreneur. And Carl happens to be an entrepreneur, and he also has worked with many entrepreneurs in his career along with Russell. And so today we're going to dive into 6 or 7 questions that really highlight the differences in the needs of an entrepreneur. So, Carl, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Matt. Always happy to be here.
Well, here's the biggest question. What are some of the expenses that most people don't know about with self-employment?
Well, I would say, Matt, what expenses don't you have to worry about? You know, it's everything. It's on you. Again, I won't be able to touch on every single one, but, you know, where it comes down to your phones, your IT department, your computers, your office space, your employees, obviously, are your biggest costs. But everything, unlike if you're a W-2 employee, you sort of show up and, you know, have a computer provided for you, have a phone provided, have pens, paper, all of those things provided for you. And I think that's what gets lost sometimes with self-employed people or entrepreneurs. And again, it depends on the style of business that you're in, but you supply everything. And again, it's down to Post-it notes. It's down to, you know, paying for the alarm monitoring every month, the IT, as I mentioned earlier. It's literally every single thing that is touched by you or an employee, your file cabinets, your files, the paper, the drinks you give out to clients. I mean, everything is on you. So I think that's what is surprising when a lot of entrepreneurs go into business, is that they don't realize that every single cost or things they may have taken for granted previously are now on their shoulders.
And it adds up so fast, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's, you know, and it always inevitably happens when you feel like you're kind of getting ahead or getting in a better situation, then something pops up, or, you know, that you have to deal with, or all of a sudden you need more of something. So it can just be very challenging sometimes to feel like you're making any progress, if you will.
Yeah. Now, my second question is one that was very surprising to me when I became an entrepreneur, which is, you know, when you have a job, and I'm air quoting there, you have a consistent paycheck, usually one that is generally consistent, right? As an entrepreneur, it's feast or famine sometimes. I mean, there's some times where, you know, you got, you know, lots of extra cash, and other times where you're really scraping by. In your experience in helping people with their plans, what do you do about that? How do you help somebody with very sporadic income?
Well, it's like you say, it's definitely a challenge. And, you know, sometimes, depending again on the type of business, is out of your control that you may produce the product or solve the need or whatever it may be. And then you're delayed on getting paid from whomever you did the service for. So, you know, cash flow management is obviously a huge, huge thing. I think we've referenced this in prior podcasts where, you know, you've got to really figure out how to manage those costs and bills, because as we mentioned, you know, everything falls on your shoulders. And I think, you know, when you're beginning, it's very, very difficult. When you get established and you get some sort of hopefully recurring style of revenue, it's a little easier to manage. But a lot of times what we talk about is with entrepreneurs that are our clients is find some sort of baseline that you feel of income that will come in and build your lifestyle around that. And then as your pay increases, then you can adjust your lifestyle accordingly if it's a consistent increase. But again, we have some entrepreneurs that get, you know, more quarterly basis or quarterly bonus type of investment or a quarterly payout of something. And so we build things around quarterly investments instead of a monthly type investment because that's how they're compensated. So it's just, I wish I had an easy answer, Matt, but it is something that you constantly have to figure out and work through. But finding a baseline that you feel like of income that you're going to take in regardless of what's going on and managing your lifestyle to that is probably the best advice I could give.
So, Carl, when we're talking about, sporadic income, one of the other big concerns is tax considerations, not only for boons and busts when it comes to income, but also there are a lot of things that you have to keep track of. You guys personally deal with this too, but what are some of the pieces of advice that you could give entrepreneurs when it comes to tax planning, tax considerations, and things that have to do with taxes?
Well, I think one of the keys when you begin, and if you get in the habit from the beginning, it becomes a lot easier to do, is really designating different buckets, if you will. So as you bring money in, you always say, I'm going to take X percent of this and put it in the tax account or tax bucket. I'm going to take X percent of this and put it in the investment bucket. I'm going to take X percent and put it in the household budget. So what you're doing is when you take that income in, even though it may be sporadic from time to time, you're always taking the same percentage of that income and dividing it up so you can make sure everything gets taken care of. And taxes are the biggest one because, again, when you're an entrepreneur, you think, great, I'm getting paid all this money and, wonderful, I'm making a lot. And then you realize, oh, I'm going to lose X percent of it because I got to pay tax. And, oh, I've got to pay overhead. And, oh, I've got to pay this. So sometimes it can dampen your spirits in a hurry. But I think having these different buckets, if you will, or designate the percentages is really helpful. And that's what we'll talk to, Russell and I will talk to our business owners about, is that we want to make sure that when tax time comes, you don't get a rude awakening because you've not put any or saved any of that money. And again, it's a difficult thing, especially when you're starting in a young business because you need all of those funds you can. But again, I think if you do it from the beginning, then you get in the habit of it. And it's just like paying any other bill or your cell phone. You just say X percent of this always goes into these different buckets.
Yeah. Well, and this really brings us right to the next question, which is another thing that people need to start immediately, which is keeping records. Now, when we first started podcasting with you and Russell, one of the fun things was talking about organization, right? You guys, organizing everything and having people do things like a budget, which there's some resistance to because it's involved. But what do you tell business owners about keeping records? Is there a program, or I know you're not allowed to endorse anything, but what is the best way to keep records of your finances?
I mean, I think you can go kind of old school and say you're going to do a file system and be very clear, or hire someone that's either part of your team, or, you can do it through your CPA or other people where you're designating, okay, when these certain bills come in, I'm very clear on where these are going in these file folders. So when it is tax time or when I need them, I can reference these folders. So that's more of an old school way. The new school, from what I'm seeing, is, of course, everybody has a smartphone. You're seeing taking pictures of receipts, which can feed into a program. I think there are ways with CPAs that you can upload bills and documents that'll go directly to them, and they can categorize it where it needs to go. Of course, there's programs like Quicken is the most well-known that's been around, where you can really plug everything in. And then if you categorize it well, you can print out reports at the end of the year that you can provide your CPA. But obviously records are always important, but especially when you're self-employed, because everything that's tied to business, can have an effect on your income. Working with your CPA, you can determine exactly what would be tax deductible or not. But a lot of things when you're a business owner can qualify for that.
Outsourcing and working with professionals, Carl, is something that it seems that some entrepreneurs have a problem with because they want to keep everything really close to their chest or their vest, depending on which analogy you want to use there. Now, hiring somebody like you just it seems to me to be logical because you're going to really want to have somebody who can help with the business planning stuff, just like what you were just talking about. But what other professionals besides a financial advisor, financial planner, risk manager, somebody who can provide life insurance? What other professionals should entrepreneurs really look to network with and utilize their services?
Well, I think, the main ones are certainly a financial advisor, finding someone that you can really trust and that you can work with, even from being a young business to a more mature business, because that's the key, is finding someone who can understand both sides of that coin, because they present different concerns or different issues. And then I think finding an attorney to make sure your company is set up appropriately, making sure if you're hiring employees, that's done in an appropriate manner. Also, of course, a CPA, where they're determining, are you doing your taxes appropriately, and also filing everything through so you're able to really monitor how those expenses are going, and again, what is tax deductible. Then you can look at health insurance, I think, is a big key for business owners, and finding a employee benefits firm that can not only look at, again, the health insurance, but also maybe group disability, dental, some other things that are going to be attractive to your employees. And I think the misnomer is, this is all very expensive, which certainly some of it can be. But if you're not spending time having to worry about these things, and you have people in your tent, so to speak, that you can trust, then I think it saves you money over the long term, because you're focused on your business or producing whatever product or service you provide. And so I think over the long term, you clearly see that you're in a much better situation than you would normally be, because you've got the right people around you.
Now, being in the right situation and having the right people around you is a huge way to make sure that you feel more comfortable and secure. But one of the things that doesn't make entrepreneurs comfortable and secure is the idea of, especially when you're small, that you really don't have any company benefits or retirement plans. Is there like a rule that when you hit a specific amount of revenue or income that you should really look at offering benefits and a retirement plan? I'm kind of putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a specific revenue target. I think it's more dictated by how your business, or excuse me, what your business really needs. Are you in need of hiring a key person, key laborer, key component to whatever your business is, that is saying, okay, I'm happy to come and you'll pay me a fair wage, but I'm also going to need benefits, health insurance, 401k, time off. I need some sort of structure to understand how the business works. So to me, that's what I've seen with more business owners, is it becomes, when they have a need, then that's when they begin to look at that and say, okay, now we need to implement some of these items, because I'm not going to be able to attract the talent I need in order to grow my business. Because again, some of these can be very small cost items in the scheme of things. And I think a lot of business owners think they are automatically going to be expensive or pricey, but that's not necessarily the case. And so at least exploring those options and then understanding if it makes sense for your business, I think, is the most appropriate answer. But to answer your question, I see a lot of it really dictated by what the needs are in their business at the time, not really tied to revenue or production or anything along those lines.
Now, one of the biggest mistakes I have seen with entrepreneurs is using their business account as a personal piggy bank. Right. What do you do about that, dude?
Again, I think it's from the beginning. You got to set it up appropriately to say, here are business expenses, here are my business accounts, and keep the personal separate. What we try to really discuss with entrepreneurs long term is, if this business didn't exist, what expenses are you going to continue to have? And so when we do our planning, a lot of times with those business owners, we have to really separate and say, okay, if this business is sold or gone or you retire, what are these expenses that you're going to continue to have? And best examples are cell phone, of course, that's usually paid by the business. Gas for the car insurance, sometimes a lot of meals, things along those lines. So it can have a huge impact on your long-term personal financial plan if you're used to the business paying those. And I think purely from a cleanliness, I guess is the best term I would use, to keep things separate is much, much better, because when you run reports or you look at data, it's very clear to see what's a personal expense and what's a business expense. But I think it's like anything, it has to be a habit, and you get into it initially and say, this is the way I'm going to run the business. And so we'll see that with, a lot of husband and wives business, one or the other is kind of the driver of the product or the service, then the other handles the books and the processes. So a lot of times we'll have the conversation with the spouse to say, okay, begin it this way, make sure you have separate accounts for the real estate or for business, just so it's very clear on where the money is going and what it's being used for.
If you had one piece of advice for entrepreneurs as we close out today's podcast, what would it be?
I guess I would say just spend the time to work on your business, not always in your business. Russell and I talk to clients a lot about this. And what I really mean by that is pick a day, whether it be one per month, one per quarter, where you carve out, it doesn't have to be a full day, but maybe at least half a day when you're working on your business. Things like really long-term things that you haven't wanted to deal with on a daily basis, but that that need to be handled, that's going to make your business more efficient. I needed to get XYZ to my CPA, or I needed to finish this legal document with my attorney, or I need to meet with my financial advisor to make sure things are in good order. So we call that working in your business, on your business, not in your business, which is your daily grind of what you do every day. And it's very, very difficult for entrepreneurs and business owners to get out of that mold, because working in their business, they're the driver, they're the one who generates the revenue, and they feel like they're taking time off of that, then their business won't do well. But our counter to that is you've got to work on the business to make sure you're able to continue to work in the business.
Magnificent. If an entrepreneur is listening to this, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I would say go to our website, which is jacobsandcoolidge.com, or you can certainly reach us at our office, 912-265-2876. And we'd be happy to speak with you and look forward to that opportunity.
Carl, thanks for your thoughts on helping entrepreneurs run a more successful life and business.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And if you do know somebody who needs to hear this podcast, make sure you share that podcast with them. It's super easy. All you have to do is click that share button. And also, it's a great opportunity for you to start a conversation with people and really make you look like you have a great network of smart people who are in your corner who can truly help you help your friends and family. So for everybody at Jacobs, Coolidge & Company and the Planning for Life podcast, this is Matt Halloran, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
The content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions expressed and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. Russell C. Jacobs III, Carl B. Coolidge, James Jacobs, and William Schwartz are registered representatives of and offer securities, investment advisory, and financial planning services through MML Investor Services, LLC, member SIPC, Supervisory Office, Jacksonville, Florida. Jacobs, Coolidge & Company, LLC is not a subsidiary or affiliate of MML Investor Services, LLC, or its affiliated companies.